Jema. So we are on page 516, chapter 20 of the second series of essays on the Gita, and the chapter is Swabhava and Swadharma. So this world is full of infinite variety, and there are two ways of looking at this variety. One is in a very horizontal way, flat way. Flat way is that divine is infinite, so he brings out all the different things and puts them in. There is some power which arranges them in space. This is one way to look at it. The problem with that is that it means things are fixed wherever they are. So what he has brought out, matter will remain matter, plant will remain plant, cow will remain cow forever, and man, whatever he is. This is one kind of thought, and obviously it creates a lot of, it raises uncomfortable questions that on what basis. This used to be my question with religions, which used to claim that my religion is the best, and unless you get converted to my religion, you have no hope. So I used to ask, what was the basis that to start with God created randomly or arbitrarily, if there is no karma, and what is the basis that suddenly you see different varieties of people? It is obviously a very imperfect explanation of things. So there is the other account which we find in Indian thought, and that is when it takes into account the evolutionary process. So each of us is a seed of God, or a thought of God, if you want to put it more modern. And this seed of God, or the thought of God, evolves through different successive becomings. And this is something we see even in life. A baby which is just newborn is a helpless baby. All that it knows is a little bit about its physical object. It may be destined to grow into a hero and a sage. But it starts only with, same little hunger, needs, physical needs, and it explores the physical objects with the senses. One can make a whole theory in developmental psychology on this basis, but, all this exists in Indian thought. So this is the first stage. But the same baby, as it grows into a little animal. I mean, in the good sense. He's simply running around, jumping, exploring things, not just through the senses, but through the vital energy which he has got. The same baby grows into a thought, into a rational, apparently. Many will not succeed into navigating into this third level of evolution in a lifetime, but average human being is expected. That's when we say he is an adult, that he is able to reason out, and based on the reasoning, he will live his life. He has the animal, he has the little plant or the early stirrings of life, but now reason is the master. That's when we say he is the man. But then spirituality takes into account there is something which goes beyond the rational man. And that is not yet accessible to everyone, but it is the next stage of evolution when out of the rational man grows the intuitive and the spiritual man. So this is the evolutionary account. Once you admit it, then the question is it all happening in one lifetime? So that's where the whole idea of rebirth comes, that no, there is in us an indestructible, immortal seed, and it grows through lives from the little babyhood, as Aurobindo uses the word camel man, who has nothing else but to bear the burden, to the child who is at play forever and passes through a stage of the lion man. In real life, we can see that unless you go through the stage of the lion man, the leonine, face the struggle, challenge, fight, you don't graduate to the next step because you are trying to, somehow remain like a little baby always. So these are stages of evolution. The whole Swabhava and Swadharma is referring to the same divine spirit. This is the fundamental truth because it has three aspects, Swabhava and Swadharma. One is the social and economic. A place assigned by society in a particular way, and then it has the economic dimension to it. The second is cultural. Now, cultural involves things like interbreeding, etc., which was very prominent at one point of time in India. And each culture, even though it had the same basic fundamental truth, but it approached it very differently. So if you see the gods, the temples, the architecture, the kind of worship, you see it different. If you go to a place in Ujjain, there is not the Mahakal, so there is a place where there is a image of Bhairav. Now Bhairav is Shiva, but he has come down, whatever, that story is a different story. But when Bhairav is worshipped, he is worshipped with, guess what? Alcohol. So he is given as an offering alcohol. And so somebody had taken me to all these places. I just went. He said, "This is the prasad of Bhairav." So I was in a fix. Bhairav is an extremely angry god. And I said, "Thank you. But I am child of the mother. I don't need to do this. It's okay." But they have, and they offer a kind of meat. And if you go in the temple, actually, while you are climbing the stairs, you will suddenly see a cobra dancing right there. You are taken by surprise because it's a place where the entire, and that's what you see in the Indian temples, that from the lower to the highest, Konark is a classic example. Many people don't understand. So all this is the divine, but it is not something fixed forever. There is a constant movement up the scale, like the famous example of who was this fellow who had destroyed Ghazni, no? You know his story. He was basically a slave boy. So this man, he was a slave but not trustworthy. He killed his own master and he acceded the throne. But his mindset remained that mindset. Unlike many of the great emperors, even in Islam there were some great emperors, warriors, wonderful people. But his mind remained that of a slave, that he'll come, loot and carry. And he kept doing that. He was a plunderer with an army, and a very strong army. So you can imagine. So you have, why this idea of the whole thing is important, because basically it was a way to understand and to maintain social order, which the Indian thought had striven, that if you give reins of the kingdom in the hands of the unworthy, what will happen? Happened very recently in UP Parliament, where suddenly, not recently, but earlier times, another government. So one of the education minister raised a question. He said, he is speaking about Bismil. Bismil was a great, he was a martyr, Ram Prasad Bismil, that was his full name. And the fellow took him to be Bismillah Khan, a Muslim. And so he was raising a ruckus in the parliament till somebody told him that you are talking of two different persons. He is the education minister. So you can imagine what a chaos can take place. So whatever happened subsequently is one part, but there is a truth that the same divine manifests himself in different ways according to an evolutionary process. This evolutionary process has been created by the divine for our good. So everybody gets a chance, but you start from here and you can reach there. And you go beyond. So this was the whole idea. You can't suddenly put a boy who is in kindergarten in class 10, you say all are equal, so therefore they must be. So all are equal in a sense. The child today in the kindergarten may do much better than the child today in class 11th. But it's to go through the evolutionary process. This was all that it meant. And the reason why it was the birth and heredity was given importance, it was just because they took into account the phenomena of heredity, and in a household you come up. So you develop a certain kind of sense and knack. They understood this. But as we were discussing last time, this became a problem because people started fixing things. Caste in the Indian thought was never a thing which was fixed. It was much more subtle, plastic. So you have so many examples. Parshuram is a Brahmin, but he is a Kshatriya to the core. He finishes the Kshatriyas himself. Dronacharya is a Brahmin. Kripacharya is a Brahmin, but they are both Kshatriya. Nobody raised objection that why are you doing it? So system was not fixed as it became later on, and therefore it had to be destroyed. So what was more important was not just the social and cultural aspects, but the yet deeper spiritual aspect. So Sri Aurobindo says this is what we should be concerned with, because it is a truth which is expressed in the Gita. So a spiritual aspect is that we grow from, it's very interesting that in Sri Aurobindo's yoga, in Mother's yoga, both of them has emphasized on you start with work. Work is the minimum, baseline. It's very interesting. They don't give you mantra. They don't, if people pick up mantra or anything, they don't give you a method of meditation, but work is compulsory. Work is a common point where everybody meets. And then you evolve through that. So this system was a very fluid system. There are so many stories in the Upanishad, for instance, of Revaka, the cart owner, where a person may be outwardly doing a very mundane work, but may be inwardly very evolved. He may be a saint, a sage. So later on it became a fixed system. It had to be broken. It has broken. But the spiritual side of the truth remains, and that comes from the description of the Purusha, the divine being, from where these four orders, it was everywhere, not only in India, where you have the ground level worker, the Padabhyam Prithvi, the feet from which the Shudra owes its existence. You can't, without that you cannot see. It's very interesting why in Purusha Sukta it is described like that. So often there are people who dream, so they see, they are imagining very big things, but they don't get to do anything. So you need everything. So the dreamer is like the eye which sees very far and says, oh, so beautiful. Can we reach there without the feet? Impossible. So they are part of a single continuum. And in society also, you can't have just dreamers. You need realizers. And the ideal person is who is both a dreamer and a realizer. That's a very rare thing. So it starts with the physical world, and as we evolve over a period of time, we enter into the next, where the soul enters into a larger sense of the world. It discovered there is a conscious interchange of forces. So that's where the business faculty comes in, where you understand where something is missing, and they are doing a good job, because originally business was that there are things which are plenty with me, I'll give you some. You have things which are plenty, you give me some. That's how it started. If you see, all people started exploring continents because of business. But then came the Kshatriya. He wants to not just transact, he wants to conquer and rule. So he had the third impulse, the still larger impulse. And then you had the knower, which is the Brahmin. That's how the whole system worked. And then there was something which was beyond all of these. So Brahmin was not the highest. He was within this hierarchy, and it has nothing to do with birth. It is a seeker of knowledge. He wants to understand the principle. And everywhere you will have all the four always. Say a man who is fighting in the military also has a strategist who is always behind. Who is like the Brahmin who is trying to build a strategy, and he knows the art and the warcraft. The entire Chinese military owes itself to Sun Tzu's warcraft, that how to really scare people without fighting a war and scare them to run away. And they've succeeded pretty well. The perfect art of scaring people away. So they use the word winning without fighting a battle. That's how it is. Because it requires a kind of thinking, intelligence, planning. And then there would be other aspects of a war. It's not just about fighting, it's about things, supplies and chains, and there are people who are. So it's a system which is everywhere. You call it by this name, that name, it's irrelevant. It has a spiritual side because it's evolutionary. It starts, man's career begins as a purely physical being, tamogun. So in tamogun, we are primarily prone to laziness. So your life is also like that. That's what last time I was saying, that tamogun, you do some work, rest of the time people enjoy. Then rajogun starts. So rajogun, you have these two categories, the Vaishya, where you start exploring interchange, and the higher rajogun, where you have the Kshatriya warrior, And then you have the Brahman, the Sattvagun comes, there is Brahman. So this was the original sense of what today has degenerated into caste system and rightly broken. But as Sri Aurobindo says, this truth cannot go. It is the truth of evolution. You cannot help it because human beings evolve like that. And that's where we had stopped last time. We'll just continue. Page 516. So 516, three propositions suggest themselves even at the first view and may be taken as implicit in all that the Gita says in this passage. This passage is about Swabhava and Swadharma, and is talking about the fourfold order of society. First, all action must be determined from within because each man has in him something his own, some characteristic principle and inborn power of his nature. This is important. That's what it means. In education, you have to consult the child from within. You just can't impose that everybody will do this, everybody will do the same thing. It's dangerous because it's hurtful to the self. That's how it describes that even if you succeed, you have hurt yourself. Mother gives a very interesting example in France about Rembrandt's paintings that, he was doing wonderful painting, but it wasn't selling. So then came the age of businessmen. So they realized that paintings can be big business. So one of them took pity on or sympathized with Rembrandt, and he came to see to what he can sell. So they were exquisite paintings, but he couldn't understand any of them. Then he sees one place where he used to put the palette scrapings. And he says, "Oh wow, oh my God, this is wonderful. This is amazing, mind-blowing." So Rembrandt tells him, "These are not paintings. These are palette scraping." He says, "You don't say all this. I know this will sell. Because, wherever there is uncertainty, wherever nobody understands anything, there it sells." So he got the pulse of people. So he bought that painting, and Mother describes that Rembrandt was in a state of should I not. He has told the truth. Then he says, but his stomach was very hungry. And he finally says, "Okay, take it." And he was ready to pay a lot. Even today you will see it. Paintings, in the name of paintings, all kinds of stuff, which it's okay, it's a new age. But this is how the degeneration came. When people caught paintbrush who were not really meant for that. I could equally say, so each one is meant for something. So the beauty is that living from within implies that in each one there is a Swabhava. Swabhava, we can say, is the idea of the divine within. Now, divine is infinite, but in each one of it, us, and that justifies the variety. The people in whom justice is very prominent. This used to be, I remember as a, studying MBBS, this used to be one of my, justice is higher or kindness and mercy is higher. So my logic was kindness is higher. But there are people whom justice is very strong. They think kindness is a weakness or it'll, allow all kinds of things. And one can understand that you need people who are like Shani Devata. They are only after justice, madly after justice. There are people who are kind. And both are needed in a society. You can't say that, only one type has to predominate. So the moment you say justice, then people who render justice, people who will catch the thief, etc. are required. So always this aspect of Swabhava is the mode of being, the divine idea within us, the truth of our being. That is Swabhava. And for each one, of course, everybody's truth is divine. But in manifestation, there is a certain idea or aspect of the divine which is prominent. That is the Swabhava. So what is Swadharma? Dharma is about unfolding. It is the law of the being. So Swabhava of a Kshatriya who is seeking justice, his Swadharma is to fight and conquer. The Swabhava of a Brahmin, he is seeking wisdom. He is a seeker after wisdom. And his Swadharma is to give knowledge. And this knowledge he should not give for any money, because then he is reducing himself to a businessman. The moment he says that I have a course and a fee, he is no more a person of knowledge. He is a businessman. He is selling a product. So this is how the Swabhava and Swadharma. So Swabhava is, we can say, a thought of God within us, which is like a seed which is going to blossom. And if we consult it, we grow beautifully. Otherwise, people join all kinds of trade or business or whatever they want to, but they are not meant for it. So it has great implications in education, even in career counseling, even in choosing a work. So he says there are three things. There is something characteristically our own. That is the efficient power of his spirit that creates the dynamic form of his soul in nature, and to express and perfect it by action, to make it effective in capacity and conduct and life is his work. So that is the kartavyam karma, his true karma. Each one is born with something very special, unique, his own. You have to discover it and express it. So discovery is, when you discover what you are meant for, is the Swabhava, and the means to express it, that will be his law of nature, is Swadharma. Next, there are broadly 4 types of nature, each with its characteristic function and ideal rule of work and character. And Sri Aurobindo says that, well, this part, because now things have changed, nothing has remained pure to type, so we can discard it, but the first one is important. Finally, whatever work a man does, if done according to the law of his being, the truth of his nature can be turned Godwards and made an effective means of spiritual liberation and perfection. So this is, you see, even in knowledge it comes. See the difference between Swami Vivekananda and Brahmananda. Now, in realization, Brahmananda is very high. Even Sri Aurobindo says his realization was greater. But Swami Vivekananda is a through and through Kshatriya. So it is he who goes all around, and there is a famous saying about him that when somebody told him that, sir, you are saying something but Shankaracharya doesn't say so. And what is Swami Vivekananda's response? He is not arguing on the basis of metaphysics or scripture. He says, yes, but I, Vivekananda, says so. End of the matter. Look at the power of the words. Only a Kshatriya can speak like this. He is not getting into verbal dialectics. He is saying, I have my own experience. That's the end of the story. So, and he did a wonderful work, because that's the kind of person who is required for this kind of a work which was needed at that point of time. So, if done according to the law of his being, the truth of his nature can be turned Godwards and made an effective means of spiritual liberation and perfection. So, basically, whatever I may be doing, this is not a hierarchy which has to be seen in a social construct of justice, injustice. That's not the issue. See how Sri Aurobindo is answering a problem which is taking place today. You see, people have raised the issue of justice between this and that class, woke, modern woke. Sri Aurobindo is anticipated and is answering. Look at his next sentence. The first and last of these propositions are suggestions of an evident truth and justice. So what is justice? Justice is that I must do something which is in tune with my inmost nature. That is success for me. Success for me is when I consult my nature and I live according to that. That is truth and justice which the divine has ordained. Truth and justice is not that everybody gets the same amount of money and everybody does the same job. That's never a truth and justice. Truth and justice is that Alice in Wonderland brings it out very interestingly. When, who is that? Dodo. So he asks, who has won? He says, all have run the race and all are winners. Now, this is the true idea of justice. Justice is never somebody is greater and lesser. When you express and you are allowed the freedom and the possibility of expressing who you are within, that is justice. So justice is not that everybody must become rich, everybody must do a professional white-collar job. So this is where he has answered much before all that modern things which come up. The ordinary way of man's individual and social living seems indeed to be a contradiction of these principles, for certainly we here bear a terrible weight of external necessity, rule and law. So why it has happened now? And that he describes, which we all know, that now it is because, money is involved, money is governing the world. So there is a lot of problems. You want to do a job which will fetch you money. And now a Pandit cannot earn money because nobody is calling him for puja. And he has to rely on dakshina. So Pandits have also become businessmen. So they ask, are you giving me cash or kind? I know actually what to do. The fellow has become a businessman because he has, one day, casually in Jorhat, I was still with the Air Force, and so I was sitting with some friends, and one day morning, 2.5 hours, 3 hours, we were having discussion on Bhagavad Puran. So after 3 hours, they say, how come this is so wonderful and we are sharing? I never knew all this. I said, means you have read it? No, every year we call a Panditji for Bhagavad Sapta and we pay him 1 lakh rupees and so many things. So I said, see, you are giving me over a cup of tea. I said, this is the difference. If I started expecting money, then there will be a problem. So, because that's the joy of knowledge and it's so beautiful. Of course, you need money, money will come in the secret providence if you are living your own truth. So, this is the whole logic behind it, that live your own truth. So, he says that we are carrying a weight, page 517. We become parts of a machine. We are hardly allowed to be men in the true sense. Manushya, Purusha, souls, minds, free children of the spirit, empowered to develop the highest characteristic perfection of a being and make it our means of service to the race. And this has implications on education. Now this is coming up. Actually, when mother says that free progress, it's actually literally Swabhava and Swadharma. She says progress guided by your soul. And there was a very interesting movie, now I've forgotten the name, it came about 25 years back. And I said, oh, now they have understood. So in that movie, there is a son of a big man, rich man, and this thing. He is into music. So the father doesn't like it. He wants him to be famous, and he is going and playing, guitar here, there, everywhere. So he makes a name because that's his angst, his expression. So the last scene is very touching when he tells his parents, please come, Dad, you please come and listen what I am doing. So his father finally comes. And when he hears him, he is very touched. And then he tells him that I am not the son you would have wanted. Yet, I am what myself. Will you accept me as I am? And the father is deeply moved because he sees this is what. So, you see, there are a lot of forces at play in human nature now. And that's why Mother wanted a society where we could discover our own freedom and express it. That was the whole idea.
Is free progress is the creation of Tiribal?
What is it?
The free progress.
Yes, it literally means. Literally, free progress literally means progress guided by the soul, Mother's definition. Yeah. All the rest is system. Yeah. So that means you have to consult the child. Classic example is when Tara Didi, Tara Johar, her father complained that she doesn't take interest in studies. And she was 15. So mother called her and asked, you don't take interest in studies? Mother, it's not interesting to me. What do you like to do? She said photography. Mother told her, here's the camera, go and do photography. So she went through just photography. And today, thanks to her photography, so when you do what you are meant to do, and that's where Sri Aurobindo says the next sentence, the child's education ought to be an outbringing of all that is best. So it is from within outwards. That's exactly what Mother has been, trying in the school of Center of Education. It's a different thing that parents come with all kinds of ideas. They want a child, they want homework, they want child to do everything. But idea behind is this. The child's education ought to be an outbringing of all that is best, most powerful, most intimate, and living in his nature. The mold into which the man's action and development ought to run is that of his innate quality and power. So there is the story of this boy who used to bully everybody. He wanted to prove that he is strong. So what was mother's way? So people complained, mother called this boy and said, okay, tell me, what requires greater strength? He's a worshipper of strength. She says to hit someone, or when you feel the urge to hit, to hold the hand and put it in the pocket. He says, well, holding the hand and putting in the pocket is most difficult. He said, okay, let me see whether you can do it or not. It changed him. It's a real story. Mother didn't tell him it is bad, because this is in accordance with his nature. He is a Kshatriya. You can't tell him, sit like a sadhu bacha and study. So this has implications in education, but you have to remove it from all this idea of, job and money. So all that has corrupted the file. Money has corrupted all the files now. He must acquire new things, but he will acquire them best, most vitally, on the basis of his own developed type and inborn force. And so too the functions of a man ought to be determined by his natural turn, gift and capacities. This is the whole idea behind it. The individual who develops freely in this manner will be a living soul and mind, and will have a much greater power for the service of the race. Because otherwise you are artificially putting products into the market. And I think in the 60s in the West, this took another form. When I think Paul McCartney's famous one, We Want No Education. I'm forgetting who was. It was very Pink Floyd. Yes, Pink Floyd. Thank you. So we want no education. And they showed people in standard formats are going inside, coming out as standard product, and everybody with white coat and tie. And suddenly there is a person who is going out of the way. So all this was a breaking up of that past mold. But people don't know what is the true mold. So that's why there is a confusion. So she has given the true mold. That's where free progress means. The second proposition of the four types and their functions is more open to dispute. That there are classical orders, so that has gone. And few lines below, the third proposition will yet stand in its general significance. Whatever a man's work and function in life, he can, if it is determined from within, or if he is allowed to make it a self-expression of his nature, turn it into a means of growth and of a greater inner perfection. So the hierarchy is not based on this is lower and this is higher. This is my expression. I may be a shoemaker. There is an aphorism of Sri Aurobindo. It is better to be a competent, good shoemaker than an incompetent king. Now, okay, king may look great, but everybody will abuse you and you may feel I am a king. But if you are a competent shoemaker, and there have been examples we have seen as children when we grew up, and you say, if you have to make the shoes, go to this man. Because he was really good. It's amazing. I remember a real event when my scooter got punctured outside Sri Aurobindo Society in Delhi. Now scooters don't get punctured, hopefully, but those were the tires and days. So there was a person nearby and I took it to him. He was making it and I was having the experience that I am seeing Mother Mahasaraswati. He was joyously doing whatever he was doing, and not only he fixed the tire, he said a couple of things more. Normally you leave it and go, but I just couldn't. I was transfixed. Looking at the way he was working, the joy on his face. And he didn't ask anything extra. I gave him because I realized that here is a person who is completely in tune with his nature. It was a joy. And so this is exactly what we should strive towards, that whatever work you give, and that's a dignity of work. It's not completely abolishing a kind of work, but a dignity of work which comes when we do things which are in tune with our own inner nature. So this is what he is. And whatever it be, if he performs his natural function in the right spirit, if he enlightens it by the ideal mind, if he turns its action to the uses of the Godhead within, serves with it the spirit manifested in the universe, or makes it a conscious instrumentation for the purposes of the divine in humanity, he can transmute it into a means toward the highest spiritual perfection and freedom. One example was like if you are cooking food. Now, it was there embedded at some point of time in Indian culture. It's all gone now. So, I have actually experienced it. So cooking food was quite a ritual. And it was taken that you are cooking food not for somebody, you are cooking food for God. See, it makes a difference. Whether people appreciate it or not is irrelevant. And even recently I saw, it's very rare to find that spirit. So I'd gone to recent conference to near Bhilai, all this steel plant. So these people, lunch time. So I said, okay, we'll have lunch. So we had to wait because they took the food to Mother and Sri Aurobindo, kept it there. They sat for meditation. So after some time, the lady said, I'm so sorry because, it was a little late, but we had to first offer it to Mother. I said, wonderful, you have made it prasad. That's what prasad is about. Prasad is not about just dining room food or this food. Everything should be prasad. And then that has a different quality. I'm sure it has a different quality. I mean, we have not done scientific studies on it. But this is the whole idea that you are not cooking for others. You are not cooking for praise. You are not cooking for this or that. You are cooking it as an offering to the divine. So there is a word somebody used in a letter to Sri Aurobindo. Sir, is it possible to cook food in the supramental way? And Sri Aurobindo says, oh, supramental cooking. Oh, yes, why not? So this is the whole idea that it should be an expression. And then it takes us to the final truth, page 518. We go below the middle part, where he says that all this derives, it's not like lower and higher. Shudra is lower, businessman is little higher, Kshatriya. It's not that. Because all are coming from the same Godhead. Narayana, Vasudevam. So he says, what is the higher truth? A Godhead is seated in the heart of every man and is the Lord of this mysterious action of nature. So whatever we may be doing, it should be He who should flow through the hands, through the feet, through the eyes, through the pen, through the voice, through the heart. How beautiful life will be. And though the spirit of the universe, this one who is all, seems to be turning us on the wheel of the world as if mounted on a machine by the force of Maya, Yantra Rudini Maya. I'll skip a few lines, last two lines on the same page. It is in accordance with this inner soul truth that, as our opened eyes will discover, we are progressively shaped by this spirit within us in its all-wise omnipotence. This is exactly how the ashram was constituted by the mother. There was Jayantilal, I was telling that last time, he didn't know anything about French. Mother told him, teach French. And dining room, Professor Ved Prakashji. So he was telling me, he was a professor in economics. And mother gave him the work in dining room. So somebody told him, oh, what is this work? And you should have been teaching in the school. He said, no, she has given me just the right work. It has made me progress so much. And then he jokingly said, and of course true, that see, I am a professor of economics, so I make sure that food is not wasted. It's the perfect economy in food. So he brought in economics there. Because it's not about big, like many persons want to just, teach in the school, but that's not the right way. Your nature has to be consulted. She could see through. She gave the work. Whereas Rishabh Chand, who was doing work in the garden, he was given, suddenly mother asked him that you write a book. So he went through all the stages, from looking after the furniture department, and then finally he wrote that wonderful book, Sri Aurobindo is Life Unique. So there is an evolution which is taking place, so that all the different elements are getting integrated into your nature, which is the new creation is all about that. And so on the next page, 519, this passage closes with, this action contains in itself the principle of its own success, the principle of the Swabhava and Swadharma. So what is success? You are expressing who you are within. Modern language. And it's correct. If your life is an expression of who you are, that's it. Whether you get money or not, it's another part. That speaks of the society. That speaks of human inequality within us. But if you are expressing who you are within, that is success. So that is the simplest way to define it. And therefore, he reveals, page 519, down the middle, the spiritual nature which has become this multiple personality in the universe, para prakriti jiva bhuta. So that's from the Gita. And the jiva is basically para prakriti. That's why it knows the Divine Mother. That's why the sign that one has touched the psychic being is when you recognize the Divine Mother. Automatically it recognizes, because it's a portion of her. A being no, but since she knows the toil of mind and body and life, as a mother knows and shares her children's lives, she puts forth a small portion of herself, a being no bigger than the thumb of man, to face the pang and to forget the bliss. This is how Sri Aurobindo describes psychic being in Savitri. So psychic being is para prakriti becomes the jiva. Quite naturally, because she has to deliver, she is the Divine Mother. So the baby has to be delivered by her. And that's the secret of Tarakasura's story, where, the Asura takes a boon. What is a boon? That only if Shiva has a child may I be killed. That time Shiva is sitting in deep trance. No chance of his marrying. Forget having a child. So he says, I got it. Brahmaji says, okay. The whole story compels ultimately the marriage of Shiva and Parvati, immortalized in Kalidas' famous epic Kumar Sambhavam, the birth of Kartikeya, the slaying of the demon. Because it is only the Divine Mother who can deliver that child, the psychic being. So, that's the whole story behind it. And in nature, each of us has a principle and will of our own becoming. The idea of the divine in it, and guides by that its action and evolution, its progressive self-finding. So that is our Swabhava, our own real nature. So Swabhava is our own true nature. That is Paraprakriti. That is the meeting point between the Divine Mother and the soul which is struggling in ignorance. The moment you take the next step, you are in ignorance, you are chasing artificial flowers. But if you consult the Swabhava, you are still under the impulsion of the Divine Mother. Even if you are not doing yoga, doesn't matter consciously. It's inbuilt mechanism. Because Swabhava is the Divine Mother's impulsion in us, Paraprakriti. That is our Swabhava, our own real nature. That is our truth of being, which is finding now only a constant partial expression in our various becoming in the world. So he describes Swabhava as the truth of our being, our real divine nature. The law of action determined by this Swabhava is our right law of self-shaping function working our Swadharma. So here we have a very comprehensive definition. What the divine wants in us, that his truth within us, seeking expression, not yet. So that is Swabhava. Swadharma is the law by which it can express itself. And so next page, somewhere after 10 lines from above, to follow the law of its being, Swadharma, to develop the idea in its being, Swabhava, is its ground of safety, its right walk and procedure. That does not in the end chain down the soul to any present formulation, but rather by this way of development it enriches itself most surely. So this is what we have to discover, consult, and based on that. So career counseling, original is inside. So you see, consult what your original Swabhava is and live to express it. That's the joy of life. Doesn't matter, success and failure will come. But the fact that you have lived a life truly your own. Okay. And then he expands the scope, few more lines below. This law obtains in one form or another in all nature. It underlies all that action of law of universality and law of variation revealed to us by science. So we have in nature, so there are two interesting stories about it. One is where a sadhu rescues a scorpion. So the scorpion bites. So he lets go because he can't pain. So he again rescues, and it happens. Of course, sadhu should have been intelligent and found better ways of rescuing, but that apart. So somebody asked him, why you are doing it? Don't you see it is biting? So he says, see, the scorpion is bound by its nature. Its nature in self-defense, it is biting. And I, with mine, should I adopt the scorpion's nature? My nature is to save, and I am doing it. But Sri Ramakrishna gave a very interesting example. So he says that there was a cobra and all the children was afraid of this snake. Living in a little bit of forest, and so they went to a sadhu and said, this is a big problem and we are all afraid. So he says, okay, don't worry, I'll handle this. So he goes and the cobra comes and he knows the cobra language, or the animal language. He says, why are you doing it? See, children are very scared. He says, this is my Swadharma. He says, I understand, but you are scaring the children too much. So he says, okay. You don't need to eat them. You will never. So why are you do it with animals? So cobra understands. Says, okay. So I'll not bite henceforth. He says, never bite, because people may. You don't need to bite. You can chase a rat and just gobble it. So he is very happy. So sadhu goes. After 1 year he comes and the cobra is crying. He is lying on the road, all bleeding, wounded. He said, what happened to you? He said, you told me not to bite. Now all the children throw stones at me. I am following your advice. See what I have come to. So the sadhu told him, I told you not to bite. I didn't tell you not to hiss. So there is a truth of your own Swadharma. You can't. So for a cobra living inside that, it is instinctive. It is his nature. For a tiger to pounce upon a deer and eat it is tiger's Swadharma. But if we do it clandestinely, hide from behind and attack somebody, unless it's a war situation as a warrior, even for the warrior's code of conduct, this was not considered noble, then we are no better. So this is what is being implied here. And then he says that this is the highest truth of Swabhava and Swadharma, but in real life it gets terribly mixed. So Brahmins do not really express knowledge, they start doing it for money. They are Vaishyas masquerading as Brahmins, or the Kshatriya does not fight to maintain the standards of nobility and justice. He fights to acquire wealth. So he says that what we see today is a mixture, but we should know the truth so that you can purify the mixture. If you don't know the truth, then it will remain a chaos. So this is what he describes on the next page. Page 521. That's where he describes all this. And then he says that, if you go that way, we'll... Last 5 lines on this page I'll read. We become aware. So there is a fourfold soul. We become aware of a fourfold presence of the divinity, a soul of self-knowledge and world knowledge. And we see that in the 4 aspects of the Divine Mother. A soul of self-knowledge and world knowledge, a soul of strength and power, that seeks for and finds and uses its powers, a soul of mutuality and creation and relation and interchange between creature and creature, a soul of works that labors in the universe and serves all in each and turns the labor of each to the service of all others. This is the ideal society towards which we have to move. We become aware too of the individual power of the divine in us. That which directly uses these fourfold powers assigns our strain of self-expression, determines our divine work and office, and raises us through it all to his universality in manifoldness, till we can find by it our spiritual oneness with him and with all that he is in the cosmos. So that's why when Mother was asked that why she didn't make so-and-so a trustee and so-and-so, she said, if I made Ravindra the trustee, he would see only people for work. He won't see anything else. And if Pranab became the trustee, of course she had offered and he refused. He said, she told him, your freedom, you want to whatever. He said, then he will see only physically he is doing physical education or not. So there has to be a different, for each one there is different. And so on next page he says very beautifully, page 522, it is true, fourth line from above, it is true that in this birth men fall very largely into one of four types. The man of knowledge, the man of power, the productive vital man, the man of rude labor and service. These are not fundamental divisions, but stages of self-development in our manhood. The human being starts with a sufficient load of ignorance and inertia. His first state is one of rude toil and forced on his animal indolence by the needs of the body. That's what happens, when children are small, they go to school. Parents used to say, "Padega nahi to kya karega? If you don't study, what will you do?" So you realize, better labor now. This was their way of saying. And those who are still governed by this tamas are the Shudras. So it's a tamasic aspect where, life was licentious, life could be, but work you had to do well. And then he describes the others, the Kshatriya, the Sattvic mind becomes the Brahmin. And second paragraph, there is always in human nature something of all these four personalities. And the beauty is that you can at one level do all of them. Like for example, if you are a Shudra, you can do it with perfect knowledge. So you have the knowledge element. You can do it as an act of love. That whatever you are doing is going into the world. And you can do it as an expression of truth and justice. So every aspect, so to a Brahmin. So ultimately, human type has to move toward that all the four aspects of the divine are completed. This is the jigsaw puzzle towards which we are moving. And that's why he says, page 523, the fundamental truth is not this outward thing of the work one is doing, but a force of our inner being in movement, the truth of the fourfold active power of the spiritual nature. And each jiva possesses in his spiritual nature these four sides. Is a soul of knowledge, a soul of strength and of power, a soul of mutuality and interchange, a soul of works and service. So this is the truth which he is revealing to us, and now we come to the end. That it goes through the law of the three gunas, and we can read the last part of it. So what should be our way? Whatever work we are doing, it should become a worship. That's through the Swadharma we worship. I may be mending shoes, but imagine a person mending shoes with this idea that people who wear, may they never be hurt. May, their life be safe. It's a great thing. There's a whole experience of the mother about this, where she is going with, she is first in a car and then she is walking with Sri Aurobindo, and she tells Sri Aurobindo that you walk on the center. And she walks on the side where the stones are little hurtful. And as she walks, Sri Aurobindo gives her a pair of shoes. It's there in the agenda. And says, wear these and walk. It's a very touching experience of what she is feeling for. He is the king, he should walk royally. And that's the right proportion. She is everything. Without her, the work is... She has to work with the stones, with people like all of us. But this will hurt. So therefore, Sri Aurobindo gives her a pair of shoes. It's a very touching experience, that walk with these shoes. And she says, I wore them and it was so comfortable. So that was the original idea. So all action must turn into a worship. So worship is not just the Brahmin praying in with his ghanti and puja. Worship is also the Shudra mending shoes. Worship is also the Vaishya doing business, honest business. We have that example of Guru Nanak. So when his father had put him on, one day he had gone, so he said, you please sell the things. He said, okay. When he came back, everything was over. He said, you sold so much. Where is the money? He said, no money. He said, why? He said, when I was counting, I had to give some 14 or 20 of this old time, the measure was in the form of a mug. So I said, ek, do, and then it came to tera. Tera means 13, it also means yours. So he says, when I said tera, then I thought yours. Lord, all is yours. I kept giving, and the man didn't know what's happening, but I could only think of the divine as tera. Tera was no more for me a number. So I kept giving. So, these are stories where anything you are doing, do it as a worship. When you are making food, when you are giving something, when you are mending the shoes, when you are fighting a war, this is the true sense of worship. And not just going to a temple and doing some puja with homam and all this. So, this is something which the West has understood. So when you go, you feel, oh, Mahasaraswati is perfection. They may not talk about Mahasaraswati, it's not relevant. They worship Mahasaraswati. If you do it with perfection, Mahasaraswati is happy. See how Germany rebuilt itself after the Second World War. It's amazing. Because Mahasaraswati. Of course, everything must come together. But that's what is important. That you are doing your work as worship, whatever it is. And if you don't do it that way, then all this extra time going to puja and mandir and doing all this has no meaning. So this was the idea. And so we stop with this page 525. To worship Him, the divine, to worship Him with our inner and outer activities, to make our whole life a sacrifice of works to the highest, is to prepare ourselves to become one with Him in all our will and substance and nature. Can we imagine a wider truth? You don't have to separately meditate. Learn some special techniques of meditation. Aurovibindo's words. What is the highest worship will make us one with the divine, not only in the essence, but also in our nature, to worship Him with our inner and outer activities. Inner activities is thought, feelings, impulsions. And the outer activities, whatever we are doing. So what is the result? Is to prepare ourselves to become one with Him in all our will and substance and nature. Our work should be according to the truth within us. It should not be an accommodation with outward and artificial standards. Simply because it will put me in the higher echelons or in the know-how of the management, etc., etc. That's not how one should work. For to follow out the living inmost truth of this soul in our present nature will help us eventually to arrive at the immortal truth of the same soul in the now superconscious supreme nature. There we can live in oneness with God and our true self and all beings, and perfected become a faultless instrument of divine action in the freedom of the immortal Dharma. This is what we see in the life of Meera when she wants knowledge, true knowledge, and she doesn't know where to go. She tries everybody, and so finally she goes to whom? She has heard that there is a man called Ravi Das, he's a saint. So he's a saint, all right, but he's a shoe mender. So she goes to him that I want true knowledge. He says, are you sure? People will say hurtful things to you because you are a princess and a queen. And you are coming to me, I am just a shoe mender. He says, for me you are not a shoe mender, you are a knower of Brahman. These are the Indian stories which bring things into perspective. That through his outer work, and same with Bulle Shah, the famous, the song is there, and he goes to a man who is, he's a farmer, and he is waiting that give me knowledge. He is not even looking at him. So hours he spends that, I want him as my master because I want to. And Bulle Shah is coming from the lineage of Prophet Muhammad. So people tell him, they will laugh at you that you have the Prophet and why are you going to him? He says, that has not given me true knowledge. I must go. So then this guru, this master, after long wait, he says, what do you want? He says, I want to. Say, don't you see what I am doing? And he gives in Punjabi, he says, Ethechug otherak. Pick up from here, put it there. That's all. He says, what is this? Pick up. Then he understands. Pick up your consciousness and threads from the outer world and put it within you. That's the secret of knowledge. So any work can become a means for self-discovery and to realize the highest. This is the truth of Swabhava and Swadharma. Okay, thank you.